Hey everybody, welcome back to Byte Club, the monthly indie game club podcast. I'm your host, Nevin.
And I'm your other host, Jesse.
And this month, we are going to talk about A44 and Annapurna Interactive's Ashen.
Ashen, oh shit!
Oh shit! I've been super excited for this game for a hot freaking minute, man.
Yeah, it's a video game. I'm glad it came out this year, and we got to play it. And now we get to talk about it.
Yes. As a reminder, we will be discussing spoilers later on in this podcast. The first half of this is going to be spoiler-free, and then we're going to let you know when we're heading into spoiler territory, so you don't get no spoilerinos there.
Yeah, you don't want to get those. Those are spoilers. Not good for your diet, actually.
Yeah, they're really high in like saturated fats and carbohydrates. It's like bread, but worse.
But what? We're supposed to get that bread. I don't know. Whatever. Let's go. On.
We're supposed to get the bread, not eat the bread. Bits done. All right. So, Ashen is an open-world Souls-like that has a focus on exploration and collaboration between you and an NPC or sometimes other player-piloted partner. The biggest thing that I took away from this game is that despite its ups and its very major downs at some points, it's really worth playing purely for the sense of adventure that's just woven throughout this game. And this game and everything with it, problems, successes, weird experimental bits, everything is honestly pretty unique, and it's something I'm really excited to talk about this month.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. There's a lot that I got from playing this game that I wasn't expecting to get. And I think we both have relatively different enough experiences, both with the genre that the game exists in and the ways in which we played it, that there's bound to be some interesting discussions and perspectives on the game. So I'm excited to talk about it for sure.
Yes. So without the further ado, let's talk about this freaking game.
Yeah. So, this game opens in a really interesting way. Probably the most interesting way. It asks the question, what if Big Bird was Jesus? And really, that's the crux of Ashen, a game developed by A44 and published by Annapurna Interactive. And we've been playing it this month, like we said at the start of the podcast. It's been an absolutely fantastic time, like 65-70% of the time, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good measure of enjoyment to non-ratio.
Yeah, to say it's Dark Souls inspired would be a bit of an understatement. I feel like it is the closest thing to being a Dark Souls clone that I think I've seen in quite some time. Obviously, there's games like The Surge and 2D games like Salt and Sanctuary, but Ashen is the first game I've seen in this sort of line of Dark Souls style games. Even Lords of the Fallen, the game from the team that did The Surge, their first game in that style, that game was even farther from Dark Souls than this one is, in my opinion. There are elements of this game that make it less Dark Soulsian or Souls-likeian, however the hell you want to say that.
I just say Souls-like. I said the word Soulsian in a real-world conversation the other day, and whew, never getting that credit back.
Yeah, no, that's a weird thing to say out loud. It sounds okay in your head, and then you say it.
And then you say it, and it's like, is that a thing?
Yeah.
So what I think is especially interesting about this, other than the Big Bird is Jesus thing, is that, like, as you said, it definitely is as close to a Souls clone as you can get, but it doesn't feel like a heartless copy, like The Surge and Lords of the Fallen.
I don't know if that's necessarily fair. I think The Surge, it does a lot of things with its design that steps it away from Dark Souls in its combat. The parts of Ashen that I think make Ashen very much are not reflected in the combat. outside of the NPC, and even then, that's still Dark Souls.
I guess I worded that kind of poorly. What I'm trying to say is that I think there are things that make a game a Souls-like beyond its combat and its
certainly
its approach to enemy placement and stuff. And it's those aspects that Ashen really manages to land, like the lore and the world design itself. But at the same time, it does its own stuff and sets itself apart by presenting a story, like a more direct story, and a lot of sub-stories in an easier to follow way, that I almost feel like I like more than how Dark Souls does its quests and stuff.
Yeah. So we have different opinions on this game than I was expecting. So not significantly so, but on certain aspects for sure.
It's always fun. It's always fun. I love it.
It's always good when we don't agree. I like that. So I don't think the lore is particularly like presented in a way that's better. It's just adjacent to the way that Dark Souls, the first Dark Souls to be specific, does it. I mean,
no, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that the way the lore was presented was better. That's not it. The way the lore is presented is very similar. That's something that it lands true to form, basically, for like Souls-likes. I was saying the approach to quest and in-game story, like the actual stories that you experience, the way those are presented, I feel is stronger, or in a. I like the way it's presented here more than in Souls.
And in that way, you mean the
like the quest log and the actual interactions with the NPCs and stuff like that. They're presented better. That's all. They're easier to follow, so you can make sure you get all of it.
Okay, yeah, I suppose that's fair. I mean, I think back to Dark Souls and you being given things to do by NPCs, sometimes directly, sometimes less so, and things coming along the way, and you have to keep talking to the same people sometimes, and how that sort of adds to the game. Yeah, it is easy to lose track of. So I think in one way, like, the inclusion of the questing log definitely helps it feel different from Dark Souls in the way that you sort of solve problems in the world. Like, it presents you with tasks, and it's not like we're going to be really obscure and then not let you know what it is you actually need to do. So there's that element of it, but I almost feel like it detracts from the part of the design that they wanted. Like, they want you to explore, right? Obviously. Yeah. But because they direct you so specifically, like, I feel like I was lost in my ability to actually want to explore.
Really?
Yeah, at times. Like, so closer to the end, there's... I don't want to... Never mind. I guess that'd be spoilers. It's not really.
It does direct you more towards the end. Like, it's very much you have a way to go.
Yeah, but the thing I'm getting at is less about the, like, what you're doing in the end. It's more just like a side thing. So I guess it's not really a spoiler. There's, when you're walking through one section of the game, there's a little tiny path off to the side. I don't want to get into it. It's not a spoiler, but there's just, like, it's hard to explain. There's just a small little thing you can walk on. I wanted to walk on it, right? But I didn't know if where I was going to do anything for me. And that really bothered me. Because for the whole game, I was under the impression that, like, going somewhere would get me something. But over time, I learned more and more that going somewhere didn't always mean I was going to get something. Sometimes it did. But sometimes it would mean I would die because there wasn't actually anything there, or there wasn't actually a path despite looking like there was. And so I went back and did that before we recorded this, or started recording this. And I was right. It doesn't actually take you anywhere. And it's stuff like that. It's that
so
element
it just
of it.
It just like leads to a dead end?
Yeah. So
okay.
I was less encouraged to explore because I knew where I had to go. And I figured if I just kept following that road, I would always end up finding something that I wanted. Even if it wasn't necessarily like an interesting thing or a challenging thing to get, it was always along the path to success instead of walking away from it and maybe losing my Scaria or something like that. And that was disappointing. But
I feel like that's definitely an issue. Like, it funnels you in as you progress, because the first 2-3 areas feel like super open and like there's all these nooks and crannies to explore, and I felt pulled to like climb and explore every single thing that I came across. I even tried to like jank stuff a lot of the times, like rub myself up against a wall until it says propose assisted climb and just see where I could get.
Yeah.
Like I did so much of that. And some of the best moments for me were definitely earlier on when there are these big areas and you don't know what anything is. And then they funnel you as it progresses. I definitely see that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially the last.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that a little later.
We will.
So I think what I want to go over right now is for people that are listening that have not played the game, that are interested in it, I think it's good if we go over how much this game is like Dark Souls. I think that's a fun little thing to do.
Yes,
get across to anyone listening what you are getting into, because if you've played Dark Souls, you have played Ashen, and to an almost scary degree. So the controls, how much are they like Dark Souls?
Almost exactly the same. You got your heavy attack, you got your light attack, you can wield two weapons at once.
It's not just that they have those attacks, it's that like it does exactly the same thing. And I know it's like a new thing now with action game design is to put, or well, some action game design anyways, to put light on right bumper, right, or R1, and heavy on R2 or RT, which, God, I hate controller conventions. Anyways, yeah. It's now typical to do that sort of thing, but it is weird when you have that element of it, using your items or Estus flasks, which is called the Crimson Gourd in this game, or any of the other healing items that you can find.
On the D-pad.
That's on X. Switching between items
using
is on
them
the D-pad.
Is on X. Switching is on the D-pad. Yeah.
Switching weapons is your right on the D-pad. Switching your offhand is left on the D-pad. Down switches your item. Like, B is run, and also dodge, or circle is dodge, or run. The only thing that changed with that is like Y or triangle is jump. A is interact still, which whatever, A is interact for everything. But like, there's so much stuff like that. Pausing doesn't actually pause the game, but Souls like it's it's bound to happen. But again, like there's just so many elements like that are exactly the same. There's a Craven remain. Sorry.
Yeah, you can just warp back home.
Yeah, which is dumb.
Your homeward bones.
Almost every rune warps you back to home anyways. It's just stuff like that. There's like NPCs that you can summon, but like are always with you basically. So many weird things that are just like Dark Souls.
It is like when you look at the list of features or mechanics or the way those work side by side, Ashen could be a sequel or a spin-off.
Yeah, pretty much.
I do, and this isn't a bad thing. It's just very identical. It is like an identical twin in that they don't actually look exactly the same, but from a distance.
Yeah, like if you just picked up the controller and played for 15 minutes, you would be like, and you had played Dark Souls before, everything you do would be like intrinsic. You wouldn't have to rethink the way you play or anything.
Muscle memory and shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a couple other things, by the way, that I want to mention that I think are really funny that I noticed about myself while playing. And I'm sure everyone else has played a Dark Souls game that's played Ashen has felt as well. When you dodge roll into pots, they break, and that was my first instinct. That wasn't something that
was like jumping a pot.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, when you're playing Dark Souls, and you run into a pot, if you roll towards it, it breaks. Like, that's your way of checking, just in case there's an enemy in there. You don't want to, screw up or something. My first instinct, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think, can these break? I just saw a pot, and I rolled into it, and it broke. And I was like, huh. Like I know that's a cool thing to have, and I know it's not exclusive to Ashen and Dark Souls.
But with everything else that's similar, just kind of oh hey,
there's so much stuff. Like Scaria is the Souls replacement for this game. It's your currency.
And you drop them when you die,
and you drop them when you die.
Pick them up.
But there's also consumable items that you can use that give you Scaria. So even if you die, you can still have those consumable items and still have Scaria. Like there's so many things where I was like, did they just like find the source code and like modify it a little bit while they were like playtesting, and then they just copied it exactly? Like it's so weird. It's so weird how much of it from like a base design level is just Dark Souls. It's not like trying to do anything else in the combat or in anything really, other than taking elements away from Dark Souls. Like, you can't two-hand a single-handed weapon, you know, but you have a two-handed weapon. Like weird things like that, where I'm like, like they copied everything else, but then they changed things that don't make a whole lot of sense to me. Whatever, but that's just a lot of the Dark Souls stuff. So if you play Dark Souls, you'll know what you're getting into when you play Ashen. If you don't want Dark Souls again, maybe don't play Ashen.
Well, I don't know about that, because
there are elements of Ashen that are really good.
It does have, I would say, a decent amount of things that set it apart and like make it unique, or make it like a little bit of a different experience. Like the way shields and stamina work are a little bit different. Weapons have a few different things to them. There's the whole spear thing later on.
Okay.
Which to me completely changed how I looked at the world. Like
that's so funny. I was so disappointed
I remember telling you
by
about
it.
that. I think it's the coolest fucking thing ever. It's so cool.
So okay, I don't want to spoil that. We'll get to that.
We'll talk about that
because that is a bit of a spoiler. But yeah, no, I mean, so there's a lot about the design of the world. So okay, I don't want to sell this game short, is what I want to say right off the bat. I think Ashen is it's a solid first game from any company, whether or not they're copying somebody else or not. It's a really, really good first game. There are people that have tried to copy Dark Souls
and done worse,
and have made significantly worse games. Yeah. So A44. You know, good job. You killed it.
You did it. You did a good game.
Absolutely fantastic. But, you know, if you're someone that liked Dark Souls for the mechanical aspect of it, you're not going to enjoy Ashen, in my opinion. It is not as mechanically deep. The enemy combat is not as significant. It's not as fun, in my opinion. The whole way through, the variety is very limited. Like, there's so much about it that I was disappointed by in the mechanical aspects of it. That being said, getting around is fantastic. And I think, Nevin, you said earlier that the exploration was something that you really enjoyed. So I'm really interested to hear what you think about that, if you want to just briefly go over that.
It's just, from the moment I walked out of that first cave, it felt like I could go anywhere, which is definitely, it sounds like a back of the box ass quote. But there were just so many things that I could see off in the distance, or little things I noticed while I was going towards a goal. And I just constantly found myself veering off of the beeline path that I had made. And there were also parts where, like, the way, like, when you look at the map, you see, like, oh, I need to go this way, but then it's not always that easy. You do have to sidetrack or go off the beaten path. And even though there's the objective marker at the top of the screen, it's still vague enough, or the world is still designed in a way that if you just follow that marker directly, eventually you will have to go off of a path and you will have to explore. And the fact that you can climb on so many things, and that this is, I think, what did it for me, is that the climbing system, they didn't go and mark specific points. They didn't say you can climb here, 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 and here. What they did instead was they made a system that's like, if you can jump and reach this, you can climb it. If it is a ledge, you will grab onto it if you are in the air when you are near it. And that led to a lot of me janking my way up various structures that had no purpose. Like, there wasn't something at the top of that. Sometimes there were, which was really cool. Even if it was just like a bag of money, it's like, oh, hey, neat. But I would get up on top of these structures and I would look around and go, I wonder if I can jump to that, and then try. And it's such a small thing, but that system of climbing and clambering and jumping and assisted climbing for like higher ledges was just so interesting to me. And that it made the world enticing, and it made me want to see what I could do. And I explored that world to death.
No, I mean, when I played it, I did do a lot of exploration. I would walk around, I would be on ledges, I would be looking for things where I was like, oh, there must be something over here, like there's a weird outcropping, or there's a bit of land jutting out from this structure, there must be a way up there. And eventually I would find my way up there and find nothing. Like, a lot of the time there were points where, you know, you would be like, oh, this seems like an obvious thing to do. You go there and there's something there. Sometimes it's one of the random items you can find that gives your character more health or stamina permanently. Sometimes it's just a really weird little thing. Yeah, like, there's lots of great little consumable items, great little improvements that you can find, weapons that you can find, armor that you can find if you do a little exploring. So that is a lot of fun. But
it's not there every single time that you explore.
Yeah, it's they designed the world, I think, to look nice, which is good.
Yes.
But didn't consider the fact that their exploration system is so deep. Not that it's like super, like not insanely deep or anything, but it's deeper than regular Souls games. For the genre, it is significantly more deep than the rest of them. Like, yes, Dark Souls has platforming, but it's not as tight. It's not as easy to move your character around in.
It's not made for it.
Exactly. It's not designed to be a platformer. It's not designed to be a collect-a-thon with Dark Souls combat. Which, by the way, somebody make that.
Somebody
please. But yeah, I definitely think it is solid. It is good. I just wish that there was a little more polish to it.
So what do you think? So here's the thing. There are a lot of points where you can climb to a place and there's no like actual reward there. A lot of the time in those instances, I would just like look at the scenery and be like glad that I climbed up there. Did you have anything like that, or did the
earlier certainly when the areas are a lot wider? But yeah, I mean,
no, I feel you.
Probably around halfway through, I was like climbing on stuff and finding neat little tricks, especially in the one dungeon that we'll get to. I was trying to do stuff and I would just fall off and die and be really frustrated.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's kind of like a risk reward thing, but I feel you.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm speaking really negatively on the game. I wish I
it sounds like you. I know that I know that you're not meaning this to be like as negative as it could sound. Like I know because we've talked about this a little bit that like you enjoyed this game mostly.
I did.
I also enjoyed this game mostly.
I hit the end of it and I was happy. Both to be done with it and because I thought it was a good ending. No, I thought the fight was good.
The fight was very good. Yeah, I'm there with you.
But we will get to that in a second as well. There's one more thing I think is important to go over before we hop into the spoilers section, because I feel like a lot of what we want to talk about is in there. Well, two things actually I think we should go over before we get into that. Unless, do you have anything you want to bring up?
No, keep going. You're on a tear, bud. Go for it.
So the NPC that accompanies you, it's always with you, and you can pick who it is depending on the quest that you select. Even if that's not the quest you're trying to do, if you pick the quest before you leave one of the runes, which is this game's version of the bonfire, which, by the way, this game has bonfires, but they're not called bonfires, they're called runes, just to give you another Dark Souls comparison. So yeah, the game has those in it, and you could pick the NPC that you want to come with you just by selecting a quest, and that NPC will come and go on the adventure with you. So if you want to bring a higher level NPC to do a lower level quest, you can make it a little bit easier. That's normally not a thing you can do.
Is that how that works? Because I figured the NPCs were all the same and it was just a skin.
Oh no, from what I could tell, it's
they grow and they like, well, no, yeah, the quest that you pick is the NPC that follows you along, but I figured functionally the NPCs were all the same, like it was NPC level and that's it. Do they have like a strength that's based on where you are in their quest?
So, yeah, kind of. There's lower level characters that show up over time. So, like, if you have your first character, Yokel, who's like absolute mustache bro.
I love him. He's so good.
he will probably be a higher level, right?
I didn't even notice.
If you run across a new character, because sort of the crux of the game is that when you find new characters, they will come back to your starting base, Vagrant's Rest, which is a really, really fun mechanic, and over time you see the area sort of grow, and that's part of the big reason why you keep playing the game, in my opinion, is just to see how that place changes over time, and see how the characters interact, and how there's different places, and more NPCs show up and stuff, and that's really cool. But yeah, you see your NPC companions level up over time, and you can bring them along for other quests. So they're not always the same level, and you can actually switch between them and notice that they'll have different runes, which is this game's version of the ring slots, basically, and different relics and stuff like that. So,
man, Shit, I figured all of that was based on the player that was controlling them.
Nope, you can have stronger characters just if you do their quests.
Dip dam.
Yeah.
Dip dam, dimadong dam. You can turn off the NPC assistant, by the way.
You can. That is true.
You can. But the game is not balanced around that, and in order to actually progress through some areas, you have to equip a specific rune that lets you open up two-person doors.
Yeah, so you almost get penalized for not bringing the NPC around, which seems like a weird design move. Like, they really want to encourage you to have the NPC, to have the other player there, but you can also play the game offline, which is how I played it. So I got a different experience, and Nevin, I'm curious, did you find that to be an enjoyable aspect of the game, or were you frustrated by it? The online NPC system.
I actually really liked it. It added an interesting feeling to it, and it's something that I want to talk about in the video that I'll do one day. But like, so the whole game feels like an adventure, and the fact that that NPC could be a player that sees you as an NPC is like, it's really interesting on like a philosophical level. It got me thinking about like the feeling of Sonder and all that stuff, where like everybody out there has their own fully fleshed out life that you couldn't possibly imagine, right? I struggle to put it into words without sounding like a pretentious dweeb, but to me it added a kind of emotional element to the adventure that I don't think would have been there if you were just alone, or if it was always only an NPC. And it's always nice to like do a little goofy interaction, and then the NPC reacts by doing a goofy interaction that only a player could do. Like, it's a nice little, oh hey, cool. I like it. I think it's a really, really cool idea.
No, it's a great inclusion. Obviously, from my perspective, I played entirely offline, and so I didn't really get that kind of experience, but I did get to have the NPC come along with me, and I found that they were incredibly vital to the game in a lot of points.
For sure.
But goodness gracious, are they brain dead? Like,
yeah,
the NPCs that are controlled, like
not
the companion
the
rather,
best.
That's controlled by the computer or by the game, is whew,
not always super good.
Yeah, likes to not do what it should ever at any point.
Likes to try and res you as it's being attacked.
Likes to run away for fun, I guess.
Likes to get
fights
caught
enemies
on a door.
that are like, yep, caught on a door. Likes to fall off of cliffs randomly for some reason.
That happened to me. It was very good.
That happened to me a lot. But yeah, the
Super
NPC
good.
system, it's a really cool thing. I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's super good. I really like it.
I just wish that the computer-controlled companion was not such a dumb fool.
Be nice to Yokel. He's trying.
He's trying. Ayla's wife, by the way. No question.
Yeah, yep. No, yeah.
Like, big fan.
Big fan.
I do have one more thing. One more thing.
Oh my god.
One more thing. Welcome to the Apple Conference. One more thing. I'm sorry. This is just for
the Apple Conference.
My bad. We're introducing the Apple Ashen. It's just the same game with no colors, less colors,
and it's on your phone. So good luck with that.
10 FPS. Speaking of performance, actually,
Fuck.
I played it on the Xbox One S, the Microsoft Xbox One S. While you, Nevin, you played on PC. Did you notice any performance issues with the game?
Sure as shit did, bud.
Oh, okay. Please explain.
There were. It seemed like it would hitch up around loading areas, but there were definitely like you would expect. It's a big fucking world. It's got to load shit in chunks. Like, you're gonna get to a point, it's gonna be like and then it's gonna smooth out. But there were parts in one area later in the game, in particular, I think the second to last area, where my camera would just be pointing a certain direction, and I'd be looking at like a wall or some stairs, and I would get choppy as hell. And there were
not good.
There were areas earlier on that had that issue, but not to that extent. Like, I wasn't rolling around through Blight Town here. Like, I had 60 frames per second the majority of the game. But
Okay.
the parts that got bad, it definitely dipped down to 30, 45 in that range.
Huh.
But
Interesting.
they were few and far between. Let me specify that. With the exception of the last area, they were pretty rare.
All right, so opposite situation here. Playing on the Xbox One S was an absolute travesty. I know it is the weakest of the, well, middle weakest, I guess. I don't really even include the Switch in the conversation when we're talking about performance. But of the two main consoles, the Xbox One and the PS4, it was probably one of the worst experiences I've had playing a game.
Really?
Like performance-wise, it was
Man.
abysmal. It was super choppy. It runs at 30 sometimes when it feels
Oof.
like it.
Oof,
Buddy.
buddy.
It's like mostly 24 to 30 if you're lucky.
Oh God. Hang
yeah,
on, real quick. In the area that was hell that we are going to talk about in the spoiler section, were you having like performance hiccups in there?
I mean, no,
'Cause
that was pretty okay.
That would have made
hold
that.
on. Hold on, I'm just answering your question because I don't want to
Oh,
spoil
okay,
the bit. I got to
gotcha,
cut the
gotcha.
bit. I mean, it was that wasn't really my issue. That was fine for the most part. The bigger issue for me was just like overall performance. Like you said, you had a lot of hitching when you were moving between areas, and there was a bit of that. The streaming I felt was pretty consistent for the most part. So when you were going between larger sections of the map, things weren't too bad. But overall, barely hitting 30 half the time, like to the point that my girlfriend, who isn't really too proficient with like game performance, she can't really tell the difference. She could tell there was a big difference.
Oof.
Yeah, it was pretty bad half the time.
Damn.
Yeah, it's not great. I know that it's enticing because it's on the Xbox Game Pass, and I wish that meant it was Xbox Play Anywhere and you play it on PC from the Windows Store, but it is not. I also had the game crash. I've never had a game crash on a console 7 times.
Really? Oh, 7 times? Wow.
It crashed. This game took me about 18 hours to beat. It crashed 7 times. None of which while I was fighting a boss or in a serious long haul or anything like that. So not a huge issue, but it crashed 3 times while I was loading between different areas. Like crash to the home screen 3 times while I was loading between areas trying to fast travel, and 4 times while I was just moving between areas for no particular reason.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's a
Pretty
big
bad.
ouch. That's all I got is ouch, man. Wow.
Pretty bad. Yeah, not
Wow.
great.
Hey, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't crash once.
Oh, that makes me feel great. And obviously PC is going to be a little bit quicker, but I was playing the game off of my hard drive on the Xbox One S. So I am curious, what were the loading screen times like for you?
They were nothing.
Nothing? How long's nothing?
Like a couple seconds, like 10 seconds at the most.
I
I'm
counted.
not on an
Devin.
SSD either.
Okay.
You counted?
I counted from my multiple recordings. I have a full recording of the game, and each of the recordings I checked the load times just to see if it was, like just a couple weird ones, and I remember those specifically. No, every area had a load screen that was 53 seconds long.
Ouch!
Every time I died, every time I warped somewhere, I had to wait a whole minute before I could do anything.
Ashen, more like Anthem.
Oh,
Got 'em.
quite the comedy bit.
I'm very good.
You are. You're great, in fact.
Okay. Anyways, that's
It was a
rough
game.
as hell, dude. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
So if you're interested in checking out Ashen, unfortunately, I cannot recommend you pay the $10 a month to use Xbox Game Pass to play it. Just pay the $40 and play it on PC.
Yep.
Because it sounds like you're not going to enjoy the experience as much if you play it on Xbox. Yeah.
Wow. That would... Yeah, that's all I got is wow and yikes, but that's it.
Yeah. Fair.
Fair. All right, well, we ready to talk about some spoilers?
I think we might be, buddy.
Okay, then let's do the spoiler thing. Here, we're going to talk about spoilers for this game now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, get the heck out of here, play the game, and come back. If you don't care, then hey.
Like we said, they're not good for you. So, don't get those spoilers if you don't want them, all right?
It's
That's all I'm trying to say.
It's the bad part of bread. The carbs. Okay, welcome back to now that all the people who were scared of bread are gone. Welcome to Spoiler Town.
Yeah, welcome to the bread getting part of the podcast,
where we talk about bread and how to make it.
We talk about the seat of the matriarch. Can we just talk about that?
Yeah, let's. I was gonna say, let's just get right to it. Holy shit! So the seat of the
Blight
matriarch.
Town.
God,
go ahead, please. Sorry.
So the seat of the matriarch is like the first real dungeon that you go through in this game. It is long. It is difficult. In a word, it is difficult. And that's in a very nice word for it. Another word is bullshit.
There you go.
This is, hands down, the worst designed area in the game. And it's like an abnormality, because the rest of the game is so good. And this is just so bad. It's so fucking bad.
Yeah, it's, oh my goodness gracious.
Like, I love the idea. I love the idea that you build up to this big encounter, and it's like, hey, you need to go into the fucking crust of the earth and kill this evil lady and save my sister. Please do this for me. Thank you. But it takes like an hour to get down there unless you use some random ass bullshit ass shortcut that Jesse only knows of, because I only knew of it, because our friend Mitch only knew of it because his friend, a developer, told him about it.
Yeah. It's not particularly super hidden or anything. If you do a little bit of exploring, it's pretty easy to find. But it is still like
the shortcut thing that you almost even need to then do. Is like,
yeah,
a whole fuck ass bucket of fuck.
Yeah, there's this whole nonsense you have to do. You have to like make sure that when you jump on this block, you don't like jump at the wrong angle, or you'll fall off and die when you're going down a ladder. Or sorry, you're not supposed to go down a ladder. You're supposed to jump onto the platform across from the ladder.
And then like get on the ladder and then like go down it and then climb back up so that you bait the enemies up so you can knock them off so they don't knock you off the platform as you're climbing down the ladder. There are thin platforms that you have to land on that have two of the more difficult enemies at that time positioned on them that will knock you off.
Now, to also be fair, by the way, you don't have to do this.
No, you don't, but it's the only fucking logical way through.
I did it without doing it, but the only way I was able to do that was by running past like half of the enemies in one section of the game.
Yeah. What I noticed when we were talking about this is that like, so you were about to like drop it at this point.
I was going to give up.
Said fuck it. Yeah.
I was really done playing the game at the seat of the matriarch. It wasn't just like bad. It compounding the load screen. Think about this. Every single time I ran through that, I had to wait a whole minute before I could go back into the cave. Not even like get back to where I was. Like just to get to the start of the cave took me 3 minutes every time I did it, because I had to kill the enemies going in, and then I had to kill those two big guys, and then I had to, walk the rest of the way. Like, oh my god. I can't believe I finished the game, honestly, after that. I'm glad I did, but
I'm really glad that like you asked me about it, because like I had the same fucking experience. It was rough. Oh my god, it is the blighted birthmark on an otherwise pristine game. And something that we kind of noticed is, like, as we were looking around, a lot of people stopped at this point, which is, it's maybe like 2 or 3 hours in, would you say? Like, depending on how you're playing it, maybe like an hour and a half?
Yeah, close to 2 hours, I'd say, which is, like, really, really early.
Yeah, and so many people quit at this point.
You can actually see it in you can't see it because you're on the Epic Game Store, which doesn't have achievements yet, but, on Xbox, you can actually see the like percentages when you get the achievement. It pops up at the bottom of the screen. Every achievement before the Seat of the Matriarch was about 12 to 15% from what I saw. All the achievements from the Seat of the Matriarch onwards were 3%.
That's a huge drop-off.
Yeah, it's like a joke. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but that's what I remembered seeing. And obviously the first 2 hours of a game, people will play that. It's 2 hours. What are you losing? But the fact that like so many people dropped off right at that point says a lot about the game, I think. Especially considering how small it is.
What kills me, too, is that, like, immediately, as soon as you were done with that, and, like, the boss fight, super easy. And as soon as you're done with it...
The second I walked out of the stupid cave, I was like... Or not even walked out. The second we warped out of the cave, I was like, I can't believe that this game is good again.
It's like a bad dream. It's so crazy.
It's like, I don't even think it happened.
Okay, so I want to actually talk about, like, the design of this dungeon, because there are some cool things here. There's a smaller, like, little dungeon that you go through earlier on, where you fight the first real boss in the dark. And then I think you fight one other big boy boss before going to the Seat of the Matriarch. And the Seat of the Matriarch actually has some stuff pulled from both of those two areas and encounters throughout it, and like some tidbits that you've seen like teased in the world, like the shadow enemies, the dark enemies, like they're everywhere, and they function more as traps than actual enemies, and I think that that's really cool. There's a lot of cool things that it does with light and room layout that I think are really interesting and clever when you take it piece by piece. When you take this dungeon and the quest, like, section by section, it has the makeup of something that should be good. But the problem is that it's all strung together and it's difficulty after difficulty after difficulty without much recourse. Like, there are areas where you'll get to refill your healing, which is as close to a checkpoint as you get. But the further and further in you get, that's more and more that you have to go through again. Whereas if you look at this like an area, like you would look at an area in Dark Souls, because that's essentially what this is. It's like its own area. In Dark Souls, or even in like Bloodborne, there would be multiple checkpoints throughout, and or like doors and shortcuts that you would open up. Like, you would literally open a door and have a beeline back to the earlier checkpoint. And there's none of that in here. There's nothing that you unlock by fighting your way through this dungeon that makes it easier to get back up to where you are. And that is the biggest problem with this section. And it fucking kills me. Oh my god.
Yeah. Ugh. See, I don't even think the length is necessarily a problem. Like, the distance between the runes. Right? Like, it is so far away. But, I mean, there are sections later on where, you know, the distance between the runes is ridiculous. Especially the last boss. Like, it's just as long, I think. No, it's not
there's
true.
only...
It's like half as long.
Not the last boss, but the last section. Because
the last area, yeah.
There's a checkpoint at the beginning and at the end.
And that is it. And it's not great. I know that the second last area is supposed to be, like... The challenge is getting there. There's no boss or anything. So why would there be one between there? But
I actually felt like that was one of the easier areas in the game.
Yeah. Apart from the first like 2 sections, it's super easy.
where there's all those the shadow enemies like just spawning.
Yeah. It's like showing up.
Rough.
But like eventually at that point, the simple combat mechanics, and this isn't a knock on the game. This is more like just how Souls games work. I guess it is kind of a knock on the game too. The lack of enemy variety and the simplistic mechanics means what's that accent? Means that when you get to that point, there's not a lot to learn. Like, there's nothing new the game throws at you. There's barely even new enemy combinations that they throw at you because they've kind of already used them all. In fact, I think 3 or 4 times you run into the same combination of enemies in that area that you've seen in other places already. It's just, you know, it's weird that you would get to this secret dark place and, like, there's nothing new.
Yeah.
Like, why are there no new enemies?
I expected, like, some sort of, even just, like, a unique mutation on the crawly boys. I can't remember what they're called because I did not pay a whole lot of attention to the names of things.
It's one of those games that has a lot of names that don't mean anything, so I don't blame you. I want to get into that in a second, by the way, but...
It's the 4-legged crawly boys. There you go, that's them.
You'd really think there'd be a version of those guys that are, like, scarier or
I really
bigger.
wanted, like, I think my biggest wish for this game is that the dark areas would have been scarier. Like, actually, like, frightening. But it's really just, like, not. It's just an area where you don't have a shield.
Yeah. I mean, they try to do that scary thing.
Cool.
Yeah, they try to do that scary thing. Like, they try to make it scary by having those shadow guys that when you get close to them, they warp away. But after you've seen that one time, it is not scary anymore.
I like how they handled it in the second to last area, the palace. I thought that was really cool. I loved that. And that
the palace's design in general is amazing.
It is so fucking good. One of the
fact that, like,
areas.
both paths are one path is dark, one path is light the whole way through. Like, if you go right, you're always in the light section. You go left, you're always in the dark section. That is amazing. Like, that is so smart. Because it plays on your fear of the dark if you haven't mastered that part of the game yet. But it doesn't, like, present you with an easier path. The light section is actually harder, in my opinion. The dark section is easy. If you go through it, like, it's just the dark enemies. If you walk up to, like, the shadow guys, you know what happens. Just walk up to them when they have their arms out and slash at them, and they won't hit you. Like, it's fairly straightforward. It just comes down to your understanding of the mechanics of the game.
Yeah.
Which I think is super interesting.
So we're getting super sidetracked here. Let's actually back up a little bit to the Seed of the Matriarch thing. I talked about, like, what my biggest grievance was on it, and you were saying that you didn't feel like the distance between entrance and rune was the issue. So, like, expand on that a little bit.
So, yeah, I mean, the distance isn't the problem. It's the balance at that point in the game, I feel like. Everything up until then, pretty easy. Kind of a joke, honestly. Like, I never really ran into a situation where I died almost ever, other than, like,
doing something doofy.
Yeah, like jumping off of something that was too high, or landing in the water and dying.
I liked learning that you can't swim and that there's fall damage, and a lot of it. That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun to learn over and over again all the time. But the problem is that, like, up until that point, everything's pretty easy. Like, there's still the bigger enemies, there's still swarms of enemies, so you're used to it. But stuff like shield enemies are up at that point, and you don't really learn about the shield bash and how that's effective at any point, really.
Yeah,
I feel like until that.
I mean, and
happens.
the other issue is that, like, in that area, you're using a lantern. So if you wanted to shield bash them, you'd have to put the lantern down, switch to your shield, and charge up an attack.
Yeah, and putting the lantern down is a cool idea. I like that you can do that.
I think it's super cool. I loved doing that in
smart.
that first boss fight. It's such a small thing, but it's really cool.
And I totally figured it out on accident, because I was just, like, trying to block with the lantern. But
me too.
You know,
me too.
It is weird, though, that you can leave it on the ground, but the lantern can't be active on your waist. Like,
that's a little
right.
Well, I think it's because they are ash lanterns.
What does that have to do with it working on your hip?
That wouldn't make any fucking sense!
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It just doesn't make any sense if it doesn't work on your
I'm
hip.
a doofdong. Alright.
No, it's fine. It's just weird.
No, it's weird. It's weird as hell.
But yeah, like, there's stuff like that I think the game doesn't prepare you for that section, is the problem. It doesn't give you anything to sort of compare it to at that point. There's no
steady lead up to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very high rise, and you could say it's kind of like Blighttown. Like you were saying when we talked about it, that it's the game's Blighttown, but they just don't get it right or they didn't figure out what made Blighttown work.
Yeah, they didn't.
In my opinion, not a whole lot, anyways. But, like,
I like Blight. Over time, Blighttown has easily become one of my favorite areas in a Souls game.
That's fair.
There's a lot going on in there that Seed of the Matriarch just does not seem to understand.
But yeah, I think, like, the biggest issue of the game in that section is just that they don't prepare you for it. You don't have the damage for it. Your NPC is useless, but also totally required for that section. There's just a lot to that I don't think was tested enough.
I think that's pretty fair, yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, it is what it is. It was the worst section of the game, which says a lot because it is 20 hours long, and that's only about 2 hours in.
And, like, I cannot express enough that, like, the rest of the game after this point, super good. Super good. Almost nothing but enjoyment out of me for, like, the rest of the game. It's so good. So good.
Yeah, pretty much.
Except this section.
Yeah.
Actually, real quick, I wanted to ask also about the spear throwing. I thought that was such a cool mechanic, because like as soon as I got that, I was like, oh, that's what all these points are. There's all this other shit I have to go back and check out, and I ended up not doing it because I got on the war path to beat the game. But it's such a cool idea.
Yeah. Man. I think it's like... So throwing the spear is a fun idea. I think it's a good way to incorporate teleportation into the game, so there's another way to move around. But... First off, the spears suck. Not just in, like, damage percentage. I mean, like, they get in the way. If you want to switch between weapons, you can also, like, switch to the spear as a weapon. So you don't just have a button that's dedicated to throwing.
I dislike that. I dislike
like,
that.
That's a huge problem when you're trying to get access to a specific weapon, but, like, in the heat of the moment, and the spear is in the way. That is so frustrating. Second off, they're like a craftable resource. So I think that gets in the way of them giving more opportunities to use that properly. Because I always felt like after that section where you first get access to the spear throwing to teleport, the only reason you use it after that is to get to specific areas that have items that you maybe want. So it stops being a useful tool for exploration to find new things or to find new encounters or shortcuts through stuff, or at least as far as I'm aware. It just kind of became, do you want to trade the resources you use to make this spear for something that might be good? Maybe a new weapon, maybe some consumables.
Maybe more spears.
Maybe more spearheads, you know?
Yep.
So that was kind of my first problem, just with the spears. But then, and the teleporting, I guess, because, yeah, like, you only ever really use it to reach things that you can't just jump to after a point. Like, literally, in the next area after you get the spears, there's this little... like platform at the top of the wooden area at the start where this guy's throwing those exploding spears at you.
Yeah.
So after you reach that part, at the top of that area, there's like this one platform that you cannot do an assisted jump to, and you cannot jump to on your own. But it's just ever so slightly out of reach. The only way to get up there is to throw your spear at the stupid little statue. And like, it's so frustrating. Like, what a poorly designed puzzle. That's not a puzzle. Like, that's not fun exploration. That's just like, I don't know, like, we wanted to include something, and we just gave you this mechanic, like...
So I guess what you're saying is that it feels kind of forced? Like they...
No, it feels squandered. It feels like they didn't try enough to make sure that there were reasons to do it outside of...
Get to thing.
Exactly, yeah. The only other time I can think of using it that's not for that minimal exploration thing is when you are in that, like, third to last area with the wood. Again, I don't know how to explain this, but like,
it is a lot of it's a scaffolding village.
The scaffolding village. Yeah. Thank you. The like hanging village. You have to like, the only other time I can think of that's not the first time you get it is when that thing, and that section is exactly the same thing as the first time you use it. It's just, you can't reach without using it, which, yeah, I get it. And it does make it, but if you don't have spears when you get to that point, the only way to get to, you don't hit a rune, you have to warp back. Like, go back to Vagrant's Rest, make the spears, and then go there and do it again.
Walk your happy ass back.
Exactly. Yeah. That is so frustrating. There's so many moments like that with the spears where I was like, I want to do this, but I didn't make 99 spears. I just made like 30 because I hate the spears and they suck. Like, I ran out of them.
I would 100% always had 99 spears on me, man.
Man, I didn't even bother because I didn't use them outside of combat, and I also never ran into a lot of situations like that. I didn't have that problem in the scaffolding area, to be clear, but that's a problem people could have that the game wasn't designed around. Why are there not just like infinite spears, right? Like, I get it.
And why not tie them? Why not tie them just to that button?
Or even, keep
them out of the weapons because they suck as weapons.
Yeah, they're bad weapons. You are going to find weapons that are stronger than even the strongest spears as, like, attacking weapons that you hold in your hand and don't throw. But, even as throwing weapons, they're not particularly good. It's, like, the only time I used the spear was when I was fighting a boss and had low health, and I just had to keep doing chip damage from a distance, which is, like, the cheapest way to solve the problem, but it was there, so I did it. Or when there was a point where I had to explore. And the consumables are so common and also so useless that, like, chucking a spear to get up somewhere It's like, why would I bother even doing that, right? And again, like, I hate that I have so much negative to say about this game, because it does a lot of things really well. Like, I think the NPCs are fantastic.
We're just talking about all the shitty parts.
It sucks, because, like, everything that we talk about that isn't good, or sorry, everything we talk about that is good, is either something Dark Souls already did, so it feels cheap to praise this game for just copying something somebody else already did. And the good parts about it are, like, super straightforward and simple. Like, it is nice to have a game like Ashen that is delivering an experience that isn't just the world is dying and nothing is good. It's nice to have a Souls-like that says, here's an area and you are going to make it better by helping people. Yes. That is awesome. I think that's fantastic. Like, I'm so glad there's a game like that takes that combat and says it doesn't have to be desolate. It doesn't have to be post-apocalyptic. It can be post-apocalyptic, you know? It can be about saving the world.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's a game about the rebirth of the world and, like, your role in it. And it's a hopeful game.
Yeah. I love that.
It's a hopeful and wholesome game, and I fucking love it. I love that about it. I'm so glad that this wasn't another game where it's like, well, the world sucks and everybody's dying and all the NPCs you know and love, well, they're going to try to kill you later on. Instead, it's like, here's some friends. Help them. And make a village for everybody. Well,
there's eventually an NPC. There's eventually an NPC that does try to kill you.
There's one.
So I guess this is a good way to jump into talking about the final boss of the game, which is the most disappointing twist, I think, ever of all time. That's not true. It was the most disappointing part of the game.
It was a little like, damn, this is how they're going to bring Cisna into this shit? Come on.
Yeah, it wasn't frustrating. Like, Seed of the Matriarch was frustrating. This was just disappointing.
This was just like, man, they could have done something really cool here. But, okay. So the final boss of the game...
I feel like anyone would know it, but just in case.
You fucking walk down, you're gonna summon the Ashen, you're gonna wake him up, dude, and you've got Badaron and his sister, whatever her name was, and they're gonna help you wake him up. And you go through this dungeon. It's like a short dungeon. It's not even a dungeon. It's a fucking cave. You run through it, and there's a really cool area, and you go down, and there's a little cutscene. And the sister's like, what's up, Badaron? You suck. And she kills him. And then she's like, by the way, I'm Cisna, the Lord of Darkness. I'm gonna kill you now. And you fight a giant lady that then becomes a spider lady in phase 2.
Yeah.
Phase 1, nothing to write home about. Like, you're fighting a big person with a hammer. There you go. Phase 2 was cool as hell!
It was pretty dope.
So cool.
I was a big fan.
I love her design. It is so much about her design. It's so, like, when she there's a moment where she'll hop down on all her legs and, like, run around, and you just see the body of the sister just, like, flopping around back there.
It's hilarious.
It was so cool. But the twist there of, like, by the way, I was evil the whole time, definitely a little lame. I expected something cooler. Like, I don't fucking know. Cisna is part of the Ashen, and you have to defeat her as a trial, and she manifests.
Or shit, Cisna was there even. Like, you know...
waiting for you.
Yeah, like you didn't really kill her or something like that. Or like, you know, she wasn't really dead ever. She just, like, was waiting for the Ashen moment because she knew, like, the savior was coming or something. Like,
and
there's just stuff like that, like, would have made much more sense than this boring twist of, like, the person you saved earlier, actually the villain. And it's even more undermined by the fact that when you die, you still warp back to Vagrant's Rest. So
and
every time you die, you just see Silurin, the character's original name, Silurin, and you see Badaron just standing there, and you gotta talk to them. Like, you can talk to them, and they say nothing. And it's like, what?
It would have been really cool if this were, like, the one moment. Okay, one, if they'd had a rune, like, right there. That would have been a really easy way around this. But
it would have also made it too easy to get there, but still, yeah.
This could have been the one moment in the game with a checkpoint. Like a normal-ass checkpoint.
Yeah, just
where,
a
like,
normal
you load
checkpoint.
up.
You just restart
the boss
fight.
at the beginning of the boss fight. Like, that would have been the moment to do this. And I think that doing
even
that...
if you just spawned right at the beginning of the bridge. Because if you respawn the fight, like, maybe you want to go upgrade your stuff, and you can't do that if you're stuck in that loop. But I know what you're saying, yeah.
Well, like, I think doing something like that would have given the moment a lot more narrative impact. Especially since you can you can walk, you can use one of the warpy bones during the fight to go back to Vagrant's Rest, and they're both there.
And she's just right there.
She's like, hey, what's up, Ashen? I'll make you some potions.
And it's like, woman, you're going to kill me in 2 seconds.
You're going to kill me, and you're not, brother.
Yeah, and you're probably going to kill whoever came along with me. Or they will kill themselves by walking off a cliff or walking into the lake in the middle.
Dude, I got launched or like pushed into that lake of lava at one point, and I have never panicked so hard.
It's when so frustrating.
I thought it was really cool. I like it. I wish that you could knock her in there.
Yeah.
That would have been great. I wish that you could knock her off the ledge. I got her cornered on an edge, and it's like, if I were in her position, I would get knocked off of this right now.
Or the NPC would go to swing at her and then somehow fall off, but she wouldn't. Like,
did that happen to you?
The NPC killed itself every single time I tried to walk there.
Man, I wonder if there's something different about the AI. Like,
I wonder if
because I didn't have a lot of issues
has really
with
bad AI or something. But yeah,
I didn't have a lot of issues with my AI buddy when I like knew it was an AI buddy. Because like eventually I stopped getting people.
I cheesed a lot. Like
that might have done it too, but
I would run and jump a lot, like in scenarios where you don't really have to, like just to skip a turn. And maybe the AI got screwed up on that, but there was like every time I figured out how to get the NPC to where I wanted it to be, like the companion, every solution was like, okay, an enemy is here, don't approach the enemy, wait for the enemy to approach you, and then the stupid AI won't like walk off the cliff.
So what I actually ended up doing, like there were a few times, because I didn't fight anybody in that cave leading up, because I was like, I can't do this, I just gotta get there. If you don't have a quest selected, or like if it's a quest you've already finished, and an NPC doesn't spawn, when you actually get to the boss, it spawns in Yokel, and I think that's the coolest thing.
That is pretty cool.
I love that because you help him get through all his bullshit, and then he's like, hey, what's up? My mustache is here to save the day. Just kidding, I died.
No, that's dope. Yeah. So yeah, final boss, disappointing. Unfortunately. Like the ending of the boss and thematically, but the actual fight itself was great. And I think that kind of highlights a lot of the game for me.
That's a pretty good way to summarize it. The fights are super good.
Great. But like, come on with this vague story bullcrap. Like, item descriptions still tell stories. Like, you know, the plot is still told in this really flowery language that like makes no sense, but you know, there's so many words you get.
I love
the voice acting's great. Ayla's awesome. Friggin' Silurin's awesome.
Can we just have a moment of just appreciation for Ayla? She's so good.
She's a fantastic character. I love her voice acting. I love her accent. I love like the way she fights. How
surprisingly aggressive she is.
Yeah, like, she spawned for the first time when one of the NPCs had one of those, what are they called? The relics, but, like, the ones that go in the middle? Talismans.
Talismans, yeah.
When she had that, and, like, she showed me what the dot thing on your helmet was, because I didn't have any of those until pretty late into the game, honestly. I only took the damage decrease one that, like, made everything stupidly easy, and I never took any damage unless there was a swarm. She showed me that one on the fight with the Shadow of the Ashen, and I was like, whoa, this is hot. Like, that's so powerful. Holy crap. Mm-hmm. Like, just a great companion. I was in love. Like, just so cool. She's
really good.
Yeah, great voice acting. To be clear, the companions don't say anything when you're walking around, but like
during their stories,
every time you
like,
go to Vagrant's Rest, and like tell you a story. Fantastic. I loved that. Like, again, I really feel like we're underselling this game, but like, it is a really good game. But
I think the thing is, like, there's so much about this game that is good. It's just good in such a straightforward way that there's not a lot of nuance to it. And the failings that this game does have, while few and far between, are like really interesting to talk about because of why they are failings and why they had that issue. And at the end of the day, like, we're here to talk about games. And if we have to talk about the things that suck about a game that is otherwise extremely good, then that's what we're going to talk about. Like, this game's good as hell. God, it's good as hell.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so there's a little disclaimer right there. There you go. Gotcha.
Thank you.
mechanically, the boss fight. I hadn't used potions much at all, and I was having a horrible time on that boss, so I actually looked some shit up and found out that there's a potion that lowers the damage you take by 50% when you're in dark areas and not holding your lantern.
Huh.
And that something like half of the boss fights count as dark areas, including the final fight. So I ended up going into that fight with like 10 of those potions and the fish lady antler helmet to reduce damage.
Geffen?
Why Geffen? I can't remember any names in this game. But I went in with the Geffen talisman and those potions, and like I won it on like the first try with that loadout. And I was just wondering if you had any experiences like that on the final fight or throughout the game.
Nah, I just beefed everything. With the runic axe.
Damn,
and fully charged up. I'm a real gamer god, man. No
what a strong man's
god gamer, you know.
So powerful.
GGX
Man,
gang.
I'll put in a good word with Isla for you.
Please. Yeah. No, yeah, no, none of the boss fights were particularly challenging enough to the point that I was like, I have to go do something. Shadow the Ashen, like the second last boss, pretty straightforward.
That boss was super cool too, actually.
Yeah.
The boss was really kick-ass.
I like the middle area thing. I like the dash. I like the way that it spawned ads. That was really cool.
I had a fucking panic moment when the ads started spawning because my NPC got downed and I looked over and there were like 8 dudes on him. I was just like, they're gonna come for me next. That's not good.
I like that it kills Amara in the middle of the boss fight.
Yeah, like what the hell?
Yeah, that was really cool.
So kick-ass.
She comes back when you beat him, but whatever. Like it's really cool that that's the way that it levels up, basically.
It's a good moment, like in general, because like it's the only fight where you have a second assistant, a second companion.
Yeah,
and then
the game's like, no, you don't. No,
she
you don't.
Beefs it halfway through in like the coolest way, and that like gives that fight a lot of weight because she's cool as hell, and she just died. I'm gonna kill this son of a bitch, and then she comes back, which is kind of like I don't know how I feel about that, but it was really cool.
When you're walking around Vagrant's Rest, as the game progresses, you hear her playing her little lute thingy. Harp. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know instruments, man. Playing a little.
Not a music boy.
Not a music boy. I'm a gamer. You got it. Don't ever quote me on that. I'm not a gamer. You hear her playing her little harp, and that music, like, I love that. Every time you walk into the house that she's in or near her, like, she's playing it, and you're like, man, I love this. Like, I just want to hear this all the time. Why can't this be the soundtrack for the game?
God, it's so good.
Yeah, the soundtrack is fantastic, like everywhere, no matter where you are. If you're walking around in the world, there's not much of a soundtrack, but like every time you go back to Vagrant's Rest, you hear the song and it gets louder and more interesting as
they
you
add
proceed
pieces
in the game.
to it. They add
pieces
as
the
it as
actual area gains more buildings. The music becomes more vibrant. It becomes more lifelike. It becomes more full. Hopeful is a good way of putting it as well. Yeah. And there's something with the visual design that I think is really interesting as well, just real quick. The area is really gray when you start out. Obviously, I mean, the whole game's gray. It might as well just be called Gration. But
oh, God, you got him.
Good bit. Good comedy.
Good bit. I love it.
And, but as it builds out, I don't know if it was like just my perception or the contrast with the sort of brownie roofs and structures that are created over time, but it felt like there was a higher vibrancy in that area whenever you went there.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did some sort of subtle shader thing with it, just like tweak that a little bit. But definitely they do bring more color into the area as the buildings grow. Like the wood framing, that's all brighter than the rest of the area. The roofs are all that same brown, and they also bring in like banners that are strung between the buildings, and those are like a red, which is, I think they're red, which is like super cool. And then you can eventually go inside and it's bright and there's a fire, and the things that the NPCs do in this area makes it feel like they're making a home. And this actually is something that I really wanted to talk about, because like that is a big part to me of what sells the feeling of adventure in this game, and gives you weight as a character in this world.
That's a really good point. Yeah,
you go out on these long adventures, and you're walking and you're fighting, and there are times when you're like, why am I doing this? What is the point of bashing my head against the seat of the matriarch over and over again? And then you finish it and you go back and you see that people are working on something and they've grown and they've become more comfortable, and that's really cool. That, like, every time I would go back and the village would be different, I would like get this warmth in my chest and be like, this is a really good way to give the player purpose in this game. Yeah. And it's probably my favorite thing about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. Sidebar, with regards to the Ashen soundtrack, I actually just got a tweet from them because I asked, and they are working on a vinyl edition of the Ashen original soundtrack.
Ooh.
So that's going to be a get from me, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. What were we talking about?
Something about the world, I don't know.
Something about video games.
They're good. This one,
they're good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Overall, pretty good game. I got a lot from this game. Like, it was a very fulfilling game for me, I think. I haven't... Like, we've played a lot of games. We've played a decent number of games on this show, and not all of them have filled me with this same, like, not a sense of achievement, but, like, just a good, warm feeling. Like Celeste did, for some pretty obvious reasons, I think. But this one made me feel like an adventurer. It made me feel like my character had a reason beyond themselves, and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really good way of putting it, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I word.
Every once in a while.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with this?
Not really. I think you especially kind of just hit the nail on the head there. Like, that is the thing that sells Ashen more than anything else. It's not the Dark Souls aspect of it. It's not the combat. It's not even really the exploration at times. Like, it's what they bring to that formula that puts it over the top. You know, they don't add robots, but it's still a desolate world. They don't add more Tolkien-esque stuff and keep it as a desolate world. They tell you are going to make this world better, and we're going to show you what you're doing to make it better. And that is really, really cool. And I hope that if A44 makes a game like this again, if they make an Ashen 2, if they make DLC, if they make another game that's a Souls-like, I don't even really care if they improve the combat, but if they flesh that element out more, if they can make it feel more like you're creating something, more like there's more opportunities to learn something new about these characters and grow with them and build with them, then they will have a formula for success, and I will absolutely purchase their next game or whatever they do next.
I fully agree with that. Like, if they can manage to maintain this sense of hopefulness and wholesomeness in whatever their next game is, then I'm 100% down.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Cool. So we're gonna move on to the next section, a little bit of an outro.
Yeah.
So thank you guys again so much. Thank you so freaking much for joining us for this month's episode of Byte Club. Our announcement for next month's game is Baba Is You. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it, Jesse?
Absolutely. So Baba Is You is a puzzle game where the rules you have to follow are presented as physical objects in the game world. Such a cool mechanic. By manipulating the rules, you can change how the game works, repurpose things you find in the levels, and cause surprising interactions. You can find Baba Is You on Steam, itch.io, the Humble Store, and the Nintendo eShop for $15. Oh, and by the way, we didn't announce it in the last episode, but Nevin and I have brought back his series called Extra Bytes, where for each episode of the podcast, we include a list of articles and videos that you can check out if you want to know more about the game we're discussing. Last month's episode was on Celeste, and you can find the Extra Bytes piece on the Indie Bytes website.
We don't, there might not be one for this game.
There will not be one?
Not a lot of... Oh, there will not be one. Not a lot of people actually wrote stuff about Ashen beyond a review, and reviews aren't necessarily, like, super interesting for extended reading stuff.
Yeah. So, sorry.
It's alright.
But next time, I'm sure we'll have one.
Next time, for sure. As long as people... Oh, okay, no, yeah, it's Bob Is You. Come on, yeah. I'm really excited to do Bob Is You. I've seen nothing but really cool stuff about this game. Like, I'm so excited. I'm glad you picked this.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it.
So, as always, we are going to be taking your questions about next month's game and chatting about them here on the podcast. So, send them in as you come up with them. You can send them in a few different ways. You can email Nevin at indiebytes.com. You can use a contact form at the Indie Bytes website, or you can just reply to me on Twitter when I ask for questions. As always, if you email questions, or if your question has a spoiler in it, just, denote it, and don't put the spoiler in the title of an email, because that sucks. So you can find Jesse's content on Twitter at Garashiashi.
Good enough.
Good enough. I'll get there. No, I won't. You can find more of my own stuff on Twitter at IndieBytesYT, on YouTube under IndieBytes, and at indie-bytes.com. And the music in this episode is from the Ashen soundtrack. It is so freaking good.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. There's going to be a link to it in the description. You can find it on, SoundCloud, Spotify, and the Apple Music Store, and apparently soon-ish, sometime on vinyl, which is super great.
Yeah.
So thank you guys again for listening. The last thing I want to say is that if you enjoy this podcast, tell your friends. We don't do any marketing or anything like that, so the way that we grow our audience is by you telling your friends about it. If you want to, you can send them to my Twitter with a lot of garbage shit posts, or you can send them to a little informational page that we have set up at thegoddamnbyte.club or indiebytes.com/byteclub, and just tell them about it. Let us know what you think about it. Rate us on whatever podcast platform you listen on. I don't talk often, Jesse.
I know.
So I'm doing okay.
And hey, the people that are listening, we appreciate you very much. And just listening is support enough. We really do appreciate that.
Yes,
so thank you very much.
Absolutely. And thanks for making it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next month.
Woo!
Bye.